Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven development video. I'm recording this on April 4th, 2012. Before we begin, another reminder about my Art of Agile Bootcamp that's coming up in just 1 week, April 23rd to the 27th. If you haven't registered, now's the time. There's just 1 week left. If you've been wondering about this course, I've talked a lot about what it offers to programmers. I want you to know it's not just for programmers. We do a lot of stuff that programmers will appreciate. There's a lot of design work. There's a lot of test-driven development, refactoring. We actually build real working software in the course and deliver it in 90-minute iterations. That's all very cool. And if there's somebody on your team who's not a programmer that you really want to understand Agile, they will benefit from this course. We have 2 instructors, and we actually split the course when appropriate so that the people who aren't technically minded can get stuff that's appropriate for them. We focus on stakeholders and writing stories and doing MMFs and release planning, as at the same time as we're working on things like evolutionary design and risk-driven architecture and stuff for the programmers. So definitely not just for programmers. What we do is we create cross-functional teams in this course, and it's one of the reasons I love it, because real cross-functional teams delivering real software, Agile as it's meant to be, which you don't often see. This is a chance to see it. So I hope to see you there, artofagilnyc.com. Now, when we left off, we were just getting the exception handling code cleaned up. We're pretty much done there, but the refactoring that I had go through didn't quite work. So let's go down here. Eclipse's automated refactorings are not quite smart enough. It found an invoke that was under a different class and renamed it. So fix that. There we go. I think this may be good enough. Let's see. So now if we say invoke and wait for a warning dialog, here we say expected let's do it this way. Expected warning dialog within 1,000 milliseconds. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Let's make it not work. Expected warning dialog within 1,000 milliseconds. Love it. Love it. Okay. Yeah. And if we disable this one, yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's make this lowercase because I think that's the way I typically do it. Some people call it perfectionism. I call it attention to detail. Either way, I like getting those details right. So this looks really clean. I'm pretty happy with this. Invoke and, speaking of perfectionism, and wait for save as dialog, invoke, wait condition, fulfilled. This name's a little bit clunky. Let's see. What if we called that stop waiting? Stop waiting when save dialog is visible. Stop waiting when dialog is not null and dialog is visible. Yeah. That honestly could probably be a little bit better, but I think I've spent enough time on this. So let's move on. I think these tests are pretty darn clean. Let's look at our to-dos. Well, we've still got the spike here. and we'll come back to that. We've got that intermittent test failure, which is really hard to reproduce. And let's look at our scratchpad. We've got an ignored test. Yeah, so I think this episode is probably going to be sort of a grab bag. Let's go ahead and deal with this intermittent test failure. So first, let's see if we can get it to reproduce. And the key to that seems to be just running the test a bunch of times quickly in a row. Except no. All right, I can't reproduce it. I'm going to leave some breadcrumbs for the next person to come along, next poor sucker to come along with this issue, which is me, by the way. And so say there's an intermittent test failure where the frame, yeah. Then we'll just note what we tried. Tried, invoke and wait. Did not work. Try next. Try invoke and wait around do click. Try next. Run whole test on event handler thread using invoke and wait. This test sometimes fails saying frame isn't disposed. Difficult, can't reliably reproduce. Seems to be race condition relating that appears when swing is running slow. Yeah. So that's really the best we can do there. I'm taking the to do out because if we're not going to work on it right now, if we can't solve it right now, then I don't want to leave that to do in our face because there's nothing we can do about it. So one thing that people talk about with extreme programming in particular is that people doing extreme programming say don't write comments. And that's actually not true. What we actually mean is avoid writing comments. Try to make your code speak so clearly you don't need comments. And it's a really neat exercise to say, I'm not going to write any comments at all for the next 2 weeks or next month of coding, but still make my code just as clear. And that leads to some really interesting results in terms of how you name your methods. Just like when I said down here, the warning dialog or null if not found, there was a comment here saying that it returned null, and I wanted to make that more clear, so I put it in the method. That's the kind of thing we're talking about in extreme programming when we say don't write comments. What we actually mean is make your code not need comments. And the reason for that is that code has to be up to date. It is up to date by definition. Comments, on the other hand, they tend to get out of date. I worked with somebody who, on a project where we put in just really detailed comments, and worked with an experienced programmer transitioning maintenance of that project over to him, and spent some time squashing some bugs with him. And every time we were squashing a bug, he'd go find the method that needed to be changed, carefully scroll it up so the comments were off the screen, and then say, well, I wonder how this method works. And that's because he was an experienced programmer. He knew that comments lied. And I kept reminding him, because I was pairing with him, I said, hey, look at the comments. And he said, okay, yeah. And he'd go read the comments and, move on. And then the one time he actually remembered to look at the comments from the beginning, they were wrong. And that was on a project where we'd done really careful code review. We hadn't done pair programming on it or test-driven development. We had really good, careful code review, and we're really careful about the comments. And the comment was still wrong. So comments lie. So that's why we want to put the comments in the code rather than in comments. So, and the other thing is when you do that, when there is a comment, that really screams at the reader, hey, something's important is happening here. And that's the value now, is the comments really mean something. This is something worth looking at. And there are some things that are really hard to write into code. I'm not sure how you could come up with ways to, factor out methods or make this say the same thing in method names rather than comments, but it's a little clunky. Similarly up here. But by writing the code so it doesn't need comments, or I hope it doesn't need comments, it's easier to do that when you have a pair partner because they see things differently than you. By writing your code so it doesn't need comments, you do two things. One, you make sure your code documentation up to date, because now your code is your documentation. Hopefully you're doing it well. And when you do need comments, they really jump out and say, this is important, read me. So anyway, so I think we can move on. That's done. We've still got that resolve spike to do. We'll come back to that later. That's our next big task. Oh yeah, we've got that ignored test. What is going on with that? So where is the ignored test? Is there even any way for me to find it? Well, I think, oh, it's in a spike. All right. Oh, and now that was in the look spike. Now it's giving me a warning. I've got to go back in there. Normally, I wouldn't have my spikes as part of the IDE. I wouldn't put them in the same, I'd put them in a different part of the tree, but it was convenient to do it this way. Because we're not doing a full-blown production development environment, normally I'd have a build script and stuff like that. Because we're not doing that, there's a few things about this that are a bit wonky, and that is one of them. So that was look spike. Here it is. What's the warning? Oh, it's not used. I assume it's not used. Now this isn't used. Sheesh. Okay. This is a little ridiculous. There. Okay, all of our tests should still pass. Yep. See if I can force that intermittent failure to come back. Nope. Okay, so let's take another look at this. I am really happy with the way this invoke and wait for turned out. That is pretty nice. Okay, the other thing that we've got going on here is that this code is just gotten a little bit big, and I think we might be well served by factoring out the save dialog. Let's go ahead and put that on our scratch pad. And let's see, we've done that. And yeah, we're moving into this. Actually, I think we have handled that, but double. Are there other cases? I think we've handled that actually, but okay. So yeah, that's looking pretty promising. I think next time, guess what we'll do next time is either finish up the actual implementation all the way down to the model, or we'll factor out the save dialog. I'm not sure yet, but that's what we'll have to do next. We'll have to look at that next time. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I will catch you next time.